Alright, so now that we're set up with jQuery, we're going to use it to detect a click much in the same way that we did with JavaScript, but we'll see firstly how the syntax, that is the code itself, is a lot simpler, but also how we can be a lot more flexible with the sort of thing that we can click on. So first off, very quick mini CSS challenge for you. Can you create a green circle and 2 red squares using divs and CSS? Go for it. All right, I hope you managed it. I'm going to create a div with an ID of circle because there's only one circle. And then I'm going to create a div with a class of square because there are going to be 2 squares. There we go. And then let's pop in some style. And then to make our circle, we use hash and then circle to select it. And we want a width of, let's say, 150 pixels, a height of 150 pixels, and a border radius of 50%. That's what makes it circular. And then a background color of green. All right, let's just check that. Excellent. Oh, indeed, jQuery is still installed successfully. That's great. We don't need that code anymore. All right, and now let's get the squares. So dot, because we're selecting a class this time, and we'll have the width and height the same. And this time there's no border radius and the background color is red. Let's have a look. Okay, that's great. The 2 squares have kind of gone together though. So let's give everything a margin of 10 pixels to separate out everything. Lovely. Okay. So now we're going to write some jQuery, which will just alert something when we tap on some combination of these squares and circles. So remember, with JavaScript, there was only one way that we saw to select an object, and that was by its ID. There are other ways to select objects in JavaScript, but we only looked at the getElementById command. In jQuery, this looks very different. So we start off with a string character, and that is just Shift-4 for me, and probably for you as well, but it may be somewhere else on your keyboard. And pretty much every jQuery instruction starts with a string. So the string here kind of says, right, we're doing something with jQuery. And then we put parentheses, and as you can see here on my text editor, it's saying we need a string of a selector. So inside these parentheses, we enter a string, and that's the thing that we want to select. So if we want to select this first circle, we want to select it by its ID. So that's a hash, just as it is in CSS, and then the ID. So circle. So what this does essentially means select the circle. And then we want to do something when that circle is clicked. So we use dot and then click. So pretty similar to the onClick command, but slightly different. We're just looking at click here. And then we want to do something when the circle is clicked. And just like with JavaScript previously, we create a function. So you'll notice that there are bits of JavaScript that remain unchanged in jQuery, and creating a function is one of them. So it's as before, function, pair of parentheses, and then curly brackets to contain our function code. So this is the equivalent of document.getElementById circle.onClick equals and then function. So it's a lot shorter, and as we'll see in a minute, a lot more flexible as well. So if we just alert that, circle was clicked, something like that. see that in action. There we go. So circle was clicked, and obviously that doesn't work for the squares. Here's a challenge for you though. Can you change this code so that instead of selecting the circle, it selects the two squares? So when either square is clicked, we get an alert. How do you think we might do that? I hope you got it. It's just like in CSS. Instead of #circle, we use .square. And then this selects both the squares and applies this function to both of them. So let's see that in action, or let's change the alert to make it make sense first. A square was clicked. Let's have a look. So now we click that square, we get the alert. We click the other square, we get the alert as well. We click the circle, nothing happens. So this is the second big advantage of using jQuery. As well as the code being a bit shorter and neater, it's more flexible. So I can just replace whatever goes in here with a class or an ID to select things. I can also select things by their type. So I could select all of the divs, for example, just like that. So if it doesn't start with a hash or a dot, then we will select all the elements with that name. So all the elements that are called a div. So now if we change the code to a div was clicked, then it will now respond when any one of those three is clicked. And if I click anywhere else, nothing happens because there's no divs over there. So this is an early taste of the power, ease and flexibility of jQuery. We can change our code by just a little bit, and we can select by both class, ID and the type of element that we want to select. Alright, so now we've seen how to use jQuery to respond to a click. Let's use it to change and adjust our website content.